You walked into a room today and you tried to prove you belonged there. You told someone about your new project. You mentioned how busy you are. You made a subtle joke to show them exactly how intelligent you are. You think you are building a reputation. You are actually building a cage. Every time you announce your intentions, your goals, or your status, you hand your enemies the exact architectural blueprints to destroy you. Machiavelli observed a terrifying truth about human nature. Power is entirely dependent on perception, but perception is immediately destroyed by overexposure. The man who screams his plans to the world is not a threat. He is a target. There are 8 specific things the apex predators of history never ever speak about. 8 announcements that instantly mark you as the weakest man in the room. Part 1. The announcement of strategy. You have a brilliant idea for your career. A new business, a new direction, and you immediately pick up your phone. You tell your friends, you tell your coworkers, you post vague motivational hints about it online. You want the dopamine hit of their validation before you have even done a single minute of the actual work. Your brain cannot tell the difference between talking about a goal and actually achieving it. When you announce your strategy, you kill your own execution. But from a Machiavellian perspective, the danger is much darker. You are giving your competitors a fully illuminated map of your vulnerabilities. They know exactly where you are moving. They know exactly what resources you are using, and they will set traps exactly where you plan to step. In the year 218 BC, the Roman Republic was the undisputed superpower of the Mediterranean. They expected a war with Carthage, but they expected it to happen on their terms. They expected a naval battle. They expected a slow, predictable invasion. Hannibal Barca did the impossible. He did not call a council of rival kings to announce his grand strategy. He did not issue a public declaration of war outlining his route. He gathered an army of mercenaries, thousands of horses, and 36 war elephants. He told his generals to pack for winter. He told his soldiers to march. He did not tell them the destination until the freezing, impassable peaks of the Alps were already staring them in the face. Crossing the Alps in winter was considered military suicide. The freezing temperatures, the avalanches, the hostile mountain tribes. If Hannibal had announced his intention to cross those mountains even 1 week in advance, the Roman legions would have simply fortified the narrow passes. They would have crushed him in the snow with minimal effort. Instead, he maintained absolute, terrifying silence. He suffered massive casualties. He lost half his men and nearly all his elephants to the ice. But he arrived in the fertile plains of Italy like a ghost returning from the dead. The Romans were completely paralyzed by the psychological shock. They had no defensive lines prepared in the north. Hannibal used that silence, that absolute lack of an announcement, to slaughter hundreds of thousands of Roman soldiers over the next decade. He dominated an entire empire because he refused to speak his plans aloud. The rule: do not announce your arrival until you have already conquered the territory. Let your results speak so loudly that your strategy remains a terrifying mystery. Part 2. The Declaration of Honesty. You meet someone new. You sit across from them. You look them dead in the eye, and you say, "I am a very honest person." You think this makes you trustworthy. You think you are establishing a foundation of mutual respect. It actually makes you incredibly suspicious. A man who is genuinely honest does not need to advertise it. His actions demonstrate his character over years of silent consistency. When you declare your own honesty, you are trying to artificially manufacture trust without doing the brutal work required to earn it. You are signaling to the room that you are desperate to be believed. Predators hear this declaration and they smile, because they know that a man who desperately wants to be seen as a good, honest guy is the easiest man in the world to manipulate. In the late 19th century, Andrew Carnegie was building a steel monopoly that would make him one of the richest men in human history. He was a ruthless, cold-blooded operator. He destroyed labor unions. He crushed his competitors by undercutting their prices until they went bankrupt. But if you sat down at a negotiating table with Andrew Carnegie, He never once declared himself a fair and honest man. He knew that moral words were cheap, and he knew that claiming to be a saint was a massive strategic liability. If you claim to be perfectly honest, your enemies will hold you to an impossible standard. The moment you make a ruthless business decision, they will attack you for being a hypocrite. They will use your own declared morality to destroy your reputation. Carnegie never gave them that weapon. He let his contracts do the talking. He let his relentless execution define him. His rivals did not trust his words. They trusted his absolute predictability. They knew he would always act in his own pure, calculated self-interest. And because he never claimed a false moral high ground, he could never be accused of hypocrisy. He maintained total freedom of movement. The rule: never tell them who you are. Show them what you are capable of. The man who announces his virtues is almost always hiding a profound lack of them. Part 3. The Revelation of Exhaustion. You sit down at your desk on a Tuesday morning. You sigh heavily. You turn to your coworker and you tell them how tired you are, how stressed you are, how many hours you worked last night. You want sympathy. You want them to acknowledge your sacrifice. You want to feel seen. You are actually bleeding in a shark tank. Fatigue is a vulnerability. Stress is a visible crack in your psychological armor. When you announce your exhaustion, you signal to your enemies and your rivals that your defenses are lowered. You signal that your cognitive processing is impaired. You signal that you are close to breaking. You invite them to push you just a little bit harder. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was a machine fueled by paranoia and internal assassinations. Yuri Andropov became the head of the KGB and eventually the leader of the entire Soviet state. But he carried a dark, fatal secret. He suffered from severe kidney failure. He was slowly, painfully dying. If the Politburo, the men sitting right next to him at the table, smelled a single drop of his physical weakness, they would have torn him apart to seize power. Andropov knew this, so he never showed it. He never complained about the pain. He never asked for a lighter schedule. He maintained a brutal, relentless work ethic. When he was in the room, he sat perfectly upright. He projected an aura of invincible, terrifying stamina. He went to extreme, exhausting lengths to hide his treatments. He used body doubles for distant public appearances. He hid his medical equipment behind locked doors. He ruled a global superpower from a hospital bed that he disguised as a fortress. And because he absolutely refused to announce his exhaustion, his enemies remained completely terrified of him until the day his heart stopped beating. They never challenged him because he never gave them the signal that he was weak. The rule: never broadcast your physical or mental limits. The moment you show them your breaking point, they will make it their primary target. Part 4. The Threat of Consequences. Someone crosses you. They disrespect you in a meeting. They insult your intelligence. Your blood boils. You look at them, point a finger, and say, "If you do that again, I will ruin you." You think you are being intimidating. You think you are asserting dominance. You are actually being pathetic. A threat is not a weapon. A threat is a warning siren. When you threaten someone, you are giving them the most valuable resource in warfare: time. You are telling them exactly what you intend to do, allowing them weeks or months to fortify their defenses. You are handing them the initiative. Worse, you are committing yourself to a public action. If you do not follow through on the threat, you lose all credibility and become a joke. If you do follow through, you have lost the element of surprise and exposed yourself to legal or social retaliation. True power does not warn, it strikes. In the 1920s, the American Mafia was run by loud, emotional, old-school bosses. They were called the Mustache Petes. They threw tantrums. They screamed at their subordinates. They made public theatrical threats against their rivals. Charles Lucky Luciano despised them. He saw their emotional outbursts as a critical weakness. When a highly powerful rival boss named Salvatore Maranzano began to act erratically, he put a hit out on Luciano. Luciano found out about the hit list. He did not call Maranzano and scream at him. He did not issue a public threat of retaliation. He did not try to intimidate him. Instead, Luciano smiled. He agreed to all of Maranzano's demands. He paid his tributes. He acted completely submissive. He made Maranzano feel completely, absolutely safe. And 2 days later, Luciano sent 4 Jewish hitmen men Maranzano would never recognize as mafia, dressed as IRS agents. They walked into Maranzano's office in broad daylight. They flashed fake government badges. They disarmed his guards. And they shot and stabbed him to death. Luciano completely reorganized the American underworld in a single afternoon. He did not announce his intentions. He weaponized his silence. He used Maranzano's false sense of security as the blade. The rule: never warn an enemy that you are coming. Let them discover your anger when the knife is already in their back. Part 5. The Complaint of Unfairness. You miss out on a promotion you deserved. Someone takes credit for your hard work. A client chooses an inferior competitor. You turn to your peers, you throw your hands up, and you complain. You say it is not fair. This is the ultimate anthem of the powerless. When you complain about unfairness, you are publicly acknowledging that someone else has total control over your fate. You are admitting that you are a victim of circumstances you cannot manage. You are begging the universe for a referee that does not exist. Power does not care about fairness. Power only cares about leverage. By complaining, you do not change the outcome. You merely advertise your own inability to navigate the brutal reality of the system. In the 16th century, Japan was locked in a horrific, endless state of civil war. Tokugawa Ieyasu was a warlord who spent his entire early life being treated like a pawn. As a child, he was sent away as a political hostage to a rival clan. He was separated from his family. He was abused. He was humiliated. As an adult, he was forced to serve under 2 massively powerful dictators, Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi. He was constantly passed over for absolute power. He watched men with less intelligence ascend above him. It was entirely profoundly unfair. Ieyasu never complained. He never cried about the injustice of his position. He never threw tantrums about his stolen childhood. He understood that fairness is a myth invented by the weak to protect themselves from the strong. Instead of complaining, he adapted. He submitted when it was strategically necessary to survive. He bowed low while plotting in absolute silence. He spent decades quietly building his wealth, his farmlands, and his army in the eastern provinces. He waited patiently as his loud, emotional rivals destroyed each other in endless petty wars of ego. When the moment finally arrived at the Battle of Sekigahara in the year 1600, he moved with terrifying, overwhelming precision. He crushed the remaining loyalist armies. He seized total, unshakable control of Japan, and he established a dynasty that lasted for 250 years. He did not demand fairness from the world. He manipulated reality until the outcome favored him. The rule: remove the word fair from your vocabulary entirely. It is the language of the prey. Speak only the language of cause and effect. Part 6. The Apology for Existence. You walk into a crowded room. You need to ask a question. You start with, "I am sorry to bother you, but..." You bump into a chair. You apologize to the chair. You write an email requesting something you are owed, and you fill it with soft, weak language. Just checking in. Sorry to follow up again. You are constantly apologizing for taking up space, for having an opinion, for simply existing. You think you are being polite. You think you are being respectful. You are actually training everyone around you to view you as subordinate. An apology is an assumption of guilt. When you apologize unnecessarily, you voluntarily place yourself beneath the other person in the social hierarchy. You hand them dominance on a silver platter. You invite them to treat you with disrespect because you have already disrespected yourself. During the French Revolution, the streets of Paris ran red with blood. Maximilien Robespierre was the architect of the Reign of Terror. He was a physically small, frail, unassuming man with a weak voice. He wore powdered wigs when everyone else was abandoning them. He looked like a fragile aristocrat, but he never ever apologized. When he stood before the chaotic, screaming National Convention, he did not ask for permission to speak. He did not soften his words to make people comfortable. He spoke with absolute, terrifying, sociopathic certainty. He projected such intense, unapologetic conviction that men physically larger and politically more powerful than him trembled when he looked at them. His refusal to apologize for his radical, violent ideas made him appear invincible. It made the massive, angry crowds believe he was the voice of the revolution itself. If he had walked to the podium and apologized for taking their time, they would have sent him to the guillotine years earlier. The rule: apologize only when you have made a massive tactical error that requires immediate political correction. Never apologize for your presence, your opinions, or your ambition. Part 7. The explanation of success. You buy a nice watch, a new car. You move into a better neighborhood. And the moment someone notices, you feel an overwhelming need to explain it. You say, I got a really great deal on it. Or, I have been saving up for 5 years to afford this. You are apologizing for your success. You are terrified that people will judge you. You are terrified they will envy you. You are terrified they will think you are arrogant. So you attempt to minimize your own achievements to make them feel comfortable in their mediocrity. This is a critical, devastating mistake. When you minimize your success, you destroy the aura of power you have earned. You invite people to question your competence. You teach them that your success is an accident, a stroke of luck, or a bargain, rather than the inevitable result of your superior ability. In the 1920s, Joseph Kennedy, the patriarch of the famous political dynasty, made a massive, almost incomprehensible fortune. He manipulated the stock market. He engaged in illegal bootlegging during Prohibition. He was a ruthless, brilliant operator. He bought massive estates. He drove luxury cars. He lived like an American king. And he never explained how he got his money. When the press asked him, he deflected. When high society questioned him, he simply smiled and walked away. He did not justify his mansions. He did not apologize for his brutal influence. He understood a dark psychological truth. Wealth and power that remain unexplained create an aura of terrifying mystique. People whispered about him. They created myths about him. They feared him. They desperately wanted to be near him. Because he never justified himself, people projected their own massive fantasies of power onto him. He used that unspoken, terrifying aura to build a political dynasty that put his son in the White House and shaped the course of American history. The rule: your success requires absolutely no justification. Own your victories in complete silence. Let the insecure scramble to find explanations for your dominance. Part 8. The declaration of departure. You decide you are done. You are done with a toxic relationship. You are done with an abusive job. You are done with a friend who constantly betrays you. So you write a long emotional text message, a multi-page resignation letter. You explain exactly why you are leaving. You detail every way they hurt you. You want closure. You want them to understand the pain they caused. You are handing them the final victory. A declaration of departure is not a show of strength. It is a desperate plea for them to stop you. It is a demand for them to care that you are going. You are giving them one last opportunity to manipulate your emotions. If you truly possess power, you do not announce your exit. You simply vanish. You withdraw your physical presence, your emotional energy, and your attention completely and permanently, without a single word. When you vanish in silence, you leave a psychological void. You leave them with questions they can never answer. You leave them with no target to attack. You trap them in their own minds. In August of 1974, Richard Nixon became the first president of the United States to resign from office. He gave a long, tearful, deeply defensive televised speech. He tried to explain his actions. He tried to manage his legacy as he was walking out the door. He tried to tell the American people he was not a crook. It was pathetic. It cemented his image in history as a broken, disgraced, sweating man, desperately clinging to the illusion of control. Contrast that with Diocletian. Diocletian was the only Roman emperor in history to voluntarily abdicate the throne at the absolute peak of his supreme power. In the year 305, he ruled the known world. He had stabilized the empire. He had defeated all his enemies. And then he simply walked away. He did not give a long defensive speech. He did not apologize. He did not explain himself to the Senate. He moved to a palace on the coast of Croatia, and he started farming. A few years later, the empire descended into political chaos. His former colleagues rode to his farm and begged him to return to Rome to take the throne again. Diocletian did not lecture them. He looked at them and replied, "If you could see the cabbages I have planted with my own hands, you would never ask me to return to the nightmare of power." His silent, unapologetic departure made him an immortal legend. The rule: never announce your exit. The ghost is always more terrifying than the man who lingers at the door begging to be remembered. Outro: the loud man announces everything because he is terrified of being nothing. He speaks to convince himself that he actually exists. Power is the absolute absence of that fear. Power is the terrifying discipline to hold your tongue when every biological instinct in your body screams at you to speak. Look around the room tomorrow. Watch the men who boast about their weekends. Watch the men who issue hollow threats. Watch the men who constantly complain about their workload. They are exposing their exact coordinates for the slaughter. Remain silent. Observe the map they are drawing for you, and move only when you are ready to conquer. If something in this video shifted how you see the world, the subscribe button is there. The next video covers the 6 psychological manipulation tactics your boss is using on you right now, and how to silently disarm them before you walk into the office on Monday morning. You have been warned.